A little background. Obviously, you guys know that I'm a private GMAT tutor, been doing it for more than 20 years. As time's gone on, things that have gotten better and better. The on-demand courses have gotten better. I talked about eGMAT quite a bit in the last hour. Target test prep, all sorts of products out there where learning the knowledge is getting easier and easier to do. It's getting less expensive. All kinds of people going out and doing free videos. So great. Well, then why aren't you guys all acing the test? And that's what I want to talk about here is what are the kinds of mistakes you make when you prepare, even though there's all kinds of great materials out there, even for free, certainly for cheap. What are the kinds of things you do wrong? So I'm going to count down, and we'll see how messy I make it on the board, but I'm going to count down the 10 biggest mistakes I see in GMAT studying. Okay, going to count down the 10 most apocalyptic study mistakes that I see from people. I'm going to try to go from 10 to 1. My board's going to get a little messy, but we'll go with it. Number 10, too much non-official stuff. And I'm using stuff pretty vaguely there. There's a lot of people who absolutely obsess over, hey, my score on this non-official test, that non-official test. Big, big problem, guys. It is so hard to mimic the exact style of the test. GMAT spends thousands of dollars on every single question, the testing, the data that goes into it, the rewriting, the editing that goes into those questions. I mean, often years of process. So even the very best test prep companies, I mean, some of the guys that I'm actually saying good things about here today, end up making mistakes on them, right? It's inevitable. You just can't produce a test that is just like the GMAT. GMAT spends tens of millions of dollars a year perfecting the test and perfecting the questions. So don't overreact to non-official practice tests. Verbal, be really careful about using non-official materials at all. We tend not to recommend it for our students. Quant, it can be good to use, but kind of to help you build your understanding of the underlying theory and concepts. Don't over rely on it. Take your data with a big grain of salt. We see people all the time who go, yeah, I'm scoring in the mid 700s and I took my test, I got a 620. What happened? Well, sometimes in those cases, they weren't taking the official tests. They were just taking the non-official ones, overreacted to it. Really, really, really common, unfortunately. Number 9, time management gimmicks. So what do I mean by that? There's a whole lot of stuff out there, and we all fall prey to it sometimes, right? Where it's like, oh, the first 10 questions, I got to spend extra time there so I get them right. Huge myth. If you spend too much time early on because you're obsessed over the first 10, big problem. Some people say, oh, you can only spend 60 seconds per sentence correction or 90 seconds per data sufficiency or whatever. There's all kinds of things like that out there. Don't buy into any of it. The way you want to think about time management on the test, I'm not going to get into it in massive detail here, but what's the best way? Let's say on Quant, 62 minutes, 31 questions. What is the most efficient allocation of time that maximizes your ability to get the questions right that you need to get right? Be careful on the easy stuff. Watch your back, read twice, check your steps as you go, plot your path forward carefully, read one more time at the end, make sure you don't walk into a trap of your own making. And stuff you don't know how to do, walk away from it, let it go. Verbal, don't start rushing through, it's not going to work. People say, oh, I got to read the passage in 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 90 seconds or whatever it is. Don't buy into any of that stuff. Figure out what pacing works best for you. Stick with it. As soon as you start rushing, the wheels come off. Adaptive test, easy errors, easy questions. You're in big trouble. All right, number 8. I referred to this earlier. I call it engineer's disease. With a hat tip to Mike, known as GMATNinja 2 on the GMAT Club forum. Fantastic tutor, engineering background. He was the one that coined this term in our company. So you're too inflexible, right? So a lot of engineers get trained algebra, methodical. I had a wonderful student years ago, Indian guy, smarter than me, a lot smarter than me, Indian immigrant living in New York City. He 2 master's degrees in quantitative things. Fantastic, brilliant dude. 4 minutes later, he's got 12 lines of algebra, and I'm just kind of slumped back in my chair, lazy American. Yeah, there's a way around what you're doing, man. Take it easy. So building on that flexibility, it is hard. It takes practice. It takes work to learn how to be flexible. But if you find yourself being too rigid, too much algebra, too many lines, see what you can do to sort of learn a different way of going about it, look at it from a different angle. Perfect timing. Good to see you, Daniel. Number 7, memorizing too much. This one's huge. This is one of the biggest things I see on the forum. So all these explanations, I think, I don't know how many explanations we've written answers to that are, eGMAT, some of target test prep. I mean, all of these experts that are in there writing great stuff, Karishma, Ian, Andrew, and writing these explanations. And one of the things I see people doing on the forum, verbal, let's say, they try to memorize it, right? Like, okay, I can write a great explanation for you for a reading comp passage. What does it do for you to memorize it? Nothing. What does it do for you to memorize a ton of rules on sentence correction? A few rules, okay, we'll talk about that as we do sentence correction content later on. But you do too much of it, and it's like, then your brain just doesn't work. Your human brain shuts off. There's very, very little on the test that is worth memorizing. And I know that's heresy for some people. There's very few formulas that you really, really, really need. Sentence correction, there's very few rules that apply absolutely. I taught GMAT for a long time before I ever figured out the difference between a simple and a complex gerund. It doesn't matter. Some of those details that people memorize, don't spend too much time on it. You want to keep your human brain on. It's a subtle thing, but it's really, really key. And don't waste your time memorizing explanations. I see it all the time. 6, binging. I like binging on food. You guys know that. If you've liked our content today, please invite me to your mom's house for dinner. So binging on topics, I see this all the time too, unfortunately. And there's a lot of forms that can take. One of the things we're going to talk about a ton in some of the other lessons, certain things, people walk out of the test and go, hey, what went badly? Oh, I felt like probability and combinatorics went badly. Well, how many did you see? Turns out that probability is about 2% of the quant questions. That's it. Are you overstudying it? Are you spending, so it should be about 1/50th of your GMAT study time in theory, right? Because it's only 1/50th of the quant questions. Are you doing more than that? Are you obsessing over quant first and then verbal later? Are you ignoring reading comp while you do other things? Are you ignoring sentence correction while you do other things? Those are the kinds of things we see all the time. Hey, I'm going to spend this week studying a ton of grammar rules. That gets you into trouble. Keep your studying balanced. Early in your studies, focus on the things that are going to take the longest time to improve on. So again, good hygiene, good practices so you don't make those careless errors. Reading comp, critical reasoning, slow burns, really hard to improve quickly. Some people can do it, but sometimes it just takes time. So take your time doing that. Start with the stuff that's going to take you longer, and don't sit there and go, hey, I'm going to spend a whole week studying number properties, because it's just not that huge. No one thing is worth that much to you, and you're going to lose your mojo and learn and kind of lose track of things that really are important. Number 5, very closely related, kind of hinted at it already. Studying useless stuff with an asterisk on it. Huge obsession we see in the verbal forums. Comma usage on sentence correction. Folks, it almost never matters. I can point to pretty much no questions where you need to obsess over the comma. I see people obsessing. I mentioned gerunds earlier. I see obsession over gerunds. Why? What does that do for you? As long as you understand the function and can do it intuitively, you're fine. Related, not necessarily totally useless stuff, but probability, combinatorics. People obsess over the train question on rates. 2 trains are coming at each other. How many of those have ever been published? Like 2 out of the couple thousand questions that have been released. So try to put that in context. There's a great couple of threads on GMAT Club created by our lovely founder, BB, that breaks down all of the questions that are in those free GMAT prep tests, 1 and 2, the freemba.com tests. So if somebody can post that in the chat, that'd be fantastic. But basically, what you think is on the test isn't necessarily what's really there. Arithmetic, algebra, that's half your test on quant, for example. So just be really, really thoughtful about that. Okay, number 4, practice test abuse. What do I mean by that? So I had a guy who inquired for tutoring a couple of weeks ago, and he'd taken all 6 official tests within the space of about 12 days. He was taking them every other day. That is a total misuse of them, because once they're gone, they're gone. And there's nothing else that's going to tell you how you're doing except for the real thing. So be really, really careful. You've got 6 official tests, everybody. Use them really, really carefully. Don't use them as a study tool. It's not what they are. They're a diagnostic tool. Do a test early on. That's great. Do an official test early on. And then use it to tell you what you need to work on. Go work on that stuff. And when your data from your other homework, maybe from your non-official quant tests, when that data is telling you you've improved on your weaknesses, then go back and check by doing another official test. But don't just binge on them, because once they're gone, they're gone. Yes, you can retake them, but it's always going to be inflated. It's always going to be bloated, and your timing is always going to be warped. You can say, well, I didn't remember the questions consciously. Yeah, that's nice. It doesn't matter, because when you see something you've seen before, even if you don't recognize it consciously, you're going to go through it much, much, much faster the second time. So absolutely a huge thing. Don't abuse those practice tests. Use them really, really carefully. And when you do a repeat test, take that result with a huge, huge, huge grain of salt, because if you've seen those questions before, it's gonna totally warp your score, totally warp the experience. You're going to get to the test and go, wow, I'm going much slower now. And it's going to feel totally different. So be super, super careful. I love you, Shovik. 3, ignore your physical limits, ignoring your body, frying your mind. There's a little bit of a segue. So in a couple minutes here, we're going to bring on a personal trainer with a psychology degree, brilliant guy, going to talk about body-mind connection, how to get your mind right, how taking care of your body can make you a better test taker. Also going to bring on a sleep coach. Now, a lot of you guys are type A. You're go-getters, right? You're sitting here watching a 24-hour GMAT marathon if you're watching this live. If not, you're spending your spare time watching some guy talk about GMAT on YouTube. You work super hard. You probably have a demanding job. You want to go get an MBA, be a big dude in business or a big lady in business. That's fantastic. You probably work too hard. Cold advice: take care of your body, get some sleep, have balance, be a happy person, get some exercise. We meet people all the time. Study like crazy, 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day, come home from work, study until 2 in the morning, wake up in the morning, go to work at 6. Don't do that to yourself. Your performance is going to get absolutely destroyed. What we tell our students, if you're on a work day, 2 hours of studying, you're good. Then take care of yourself. Make it 2 really good high quality hours. Weekends, maybe 3 or 4 hours a day. Don't go too much past that. It's not going to help you. Why? Think about how the test works. Careless errors kill you on the GMAT. It's how it's designed. Maybe not on purpose, but adaptive tests. You make errors on silly errors on questions that are easy for you. Your score is going to go in the toilet. So when you get to that hour number 3, hour number 5, hour number 6 of your studying in a day, that's when you're going to start making those careless errors. And what are you doing? You're training your brain to make those careless errors. It is an absolutely huge thing. And take care of your body. Get your sleep, says the guy staying up all night. Get your exercise, get into nutrition, like take good care of yourself. Don't skip meals. It really, really matters more than I can possibly tell you. We see students all the time. They know their stuff. They go to the test. They underperform by 50, 60 points. Why? They're exhausted. Their body's not right. Their diet's not right. Lots of ways without spending a ton of time. You can exercise in 10, 15 minutes a day and really make a difference for your mental function. And we're going to bring on a guy to talk about that soon here. Number 2, unresolved test anxiety. This is arguably number 1. More common than you think. One of the things we see every day, we see it on the forums, we see it in our private tutoring students. Yeah, if you really care about something, you're going to get nervous. It is normal. It is totally normal. Almost everybody experiences this. Now, when it gets bad enough to affect your ability to think clearly on the exam, you got something to deal with. Now, it's sometimes a stigma in some parts of the world, especially. I don't want to talk about my feelings. I don't want to talk about the anxiety I feel when I take the test. It is so normal, people. All kinds of ways to work on it. Mindfulness meditation. There's all kinds of coaching out there. Sports psychology helps. This is incredibly normal. I think 60% of GMAT students are suffering from it on some level. Every day I look in the forum and somebody says, hey, my practice tests were this. My actual exam was this. What happened? And I'll go, yeah, there's some anxiety going on there. And too many of us don't want to face it. It's a really big deal. And again, we're going to bring on Dr. Jenny Foreman, talk about this more, I believe, in hour number 10. And number 1, I've already been preaching about this already, ignoring unforced errors. Not a test of how smart you are, how much math you know. Not a test of how much grammar you know. And it's the maddening thing. That's why we can get 400 people showing up to a lecture about the GMAT. Is that, yeah, that's what makes it hard, right? Is that it's not a test of your knowledge. That only gets you so far. It's a base. Yeah, you need to understand some basic geometry, algebra, whatever. That's the base. That's the backbone. But you can be great. I have students all the time. I can teach dozens of them. I'm telling you, they're smarter than I am. They know more math than I do, for sure. Very, very common. Why do they struggle? Yeah, they're making errors they don't need to make. They rush through, bad time management. They get nervous. Their brain's fried because they overwork. So this is the bottom line. Fix this, thing number 1, and things are going to be a whole lot better for you on the GMAT. And I know, not sexy, but it's a really big deal.